Hello, science enthusiasts. Welcome to SciChat. Today we're simulcasting from Twitter Spaces to Wisdom and Clubhouse for the first time. Every week we bring an amazing guest to chat with you about their area of knowledge. And today we have Doc Holland, who's a livestock scientist. Cows and sheep and goats. After our interview, we'll open up the floor to questions from folks in the audience on all three different social audio networks. I got a new sound effect just for today.
Perfect.
There we go. Welcome, Doc. How's it going today?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Now, I'm good. Now, you're from the future. You're in Australia, correct?
Yes, it's 11 in the morning down here.
Right, in Wednesday. It's Wednesday,
yes.
Not Tuesday. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll get right to it. Could you tell us a little bit about your educational background? Like, you're a doctor, you're a livestock scientist. What does it entail to be a livestock scientist?
Sure. So I originally am from Florida, but then my family moved to Iowa. And so that's where I went to undergrad. I went to Iowa State University, which is a really good ag school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always very keen on biology, but pursuing agriculture allowed me to combine that with, very altruistic goals of wanting to help feed people. I'm a city kid, so I had to play a lot of catch up compared to my classmates who were from farms, but I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
And I got to work with a bunch of different species, and I discovered I really enjoyed nutrition.
Right.
I had an excellent companion animal science professor, Dr. Ellenwood, and when he started talking about cat and dog nutrition in that class, I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. So I just kept taking nutrition courses. And one of the things I liked about livestock, especially ruminants like cattle and sheep and goats, is that they have such complex, fascinating digestive systems that enables them to eat so many different things.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that later. I'm super excited to get into this. Yeah.
So I wanted to keep studying them, and then I went to UC Davis in California for my PhD, where I studied actually how we can model this. So how we can model what's going on in the animal's body and how that ties into bigger sustainability. And so I worked with some cattle and sheep research there. I worked with the California wool growers and the James Beard Foundation, looking at the environmental impacts of lamb production in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I also worked with some Australian scientists during my PhD looking at methane production from beef cattle. So then when a postdoc position opened up here in Australia, I thought, well, I know some of these people already and they're great. Why not give it a shot? And then that was 2019. And then I've been here ever since. I work at the University of New England, but also New South Wales Department of Primary Industries, which is sort of a bit like the USDA in the States, the government agency.
Right.
So I wear a bunch of different hats, and it's really cool. I study how animals respond and change, and how we can feed them more efficiently and sustainably, but also a lot of how their bodies respond. It's really cool. I get to wear a bunch of different hats, and I love it. And I've got permanent residency last year, so I'm planning on I really love it here in Australia. I don't want to leave. It's awesome down here.
You think you're going to stay there for a while?
That's my hope. I got residency last year, and
right.
In a couple of years I'll be eligible for citizenship.
You know what's funny? We got a care package from Dr. Emma Wren, who was on the podcast. She's a archaeologist, and she sent us a bunch of snacks from Australia. We were talking about the difference between Canadian snacks and American snacks and British snacks and then Australian snacks. So we got sent some of the snacky foods that the Australians like. And
like what?
Tim Tams, is that a thing? Did I say that right? Okay.
Yep, Tim Tams.
Yeah, and then my son, he loves this, it came in a can, and it's like a chocolate powdery thing. I forget what it's called, but Milo, yeah, he just loves that stuff. Yeah,
that's like a chocolate malt powder thing.
Yeah, it's like Nesquik, I think that what we have in Canada, like a Nesquicky thing. Anyways, totally off topic. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. Actually, it's actually ironic because I regularly trade care packages with friends and family back in the States, where I send them Aussie chocolate and goodies and sweets and everything in exchange for certain stuff that I can't get down here.
So what is it? And what's the thing? What's the thing, Doc, that you get sent from the United States?
It's silly, but I asked for candy corn and Peeps and pumpkin spice seasoning, and also Peeps. Australian marshmallows are different. You cannot get Peeps down here, and it's like a nostalgia thing. You can't get candy corn either. But I also asked for like tahini seasoning, like the chili lime salt you can put on stuff.
Oh,
so it's in fact, I noticed that actually one of my friends who I'm going to put her care package in the mail this week is hi Anna. But also Australia gets all the really weird candy bar flavors, so I love just sending like there's candy bars with like bits of Lifesavers in them, or like
oh, that sounds good.
Or like Rocky Road flavored, which is like marshmallows and peanuts and everything, or just all the really cool Kit Kat bar flavors like chocolate chip cookie Kit Kats.
Well, you're close to Japan. Also, they have a fascination with Kit. I had a Japanese exchange student, and they had like a backpack full of 72 different Kit Kat flavors that they were handing out to everybody. It was wild.
Yeah. So I'll have to. Maybe I can send you some of the weirder.
No, you don't have to. No, you don't have to send me anything. It's just
it'd be fun. I like seeing people's reactions, honestly.
Well, we'll send you some ketchup chips and some dill pickle chips because those are Canadian as heck. So,
oh gosh,
they're so good. They're everybody's favorite flavor up here.
I bet those would be good.
Yeah, and she sent the dog some schmackos.
Oh yeah, Emma sent schmackos. We'll have to see how the dogs like that. We'll shoot a video. But back to you, Doc. So you did all this work. You got interested in animal nutrition. You moved to Australia. But were you somebody when you were young that was really interested in science?
Oh, always. Like my mom, I remember one year for my birthday, she sent me a card that said, when you were a kid, you never stopped asking questions. Mm-hmm. And now as an adult, you get paid to do that. So, and that's true. I was lucky to have parents who both very much encouraged my interest in science. Living in sort of the Fort Lauderdale suburb area, like there's a lot of museums around. There's, you're not too far from the Everglades. There was this place called Fern Forest. It was like this little wildlife area. Mm-hmm. Like I was just always interested in different critters and like biology and animals. For a while when I in high school, I wasn't sure if I was good enough at math per se to be a scientist, but then I discovered stats and econ in college and realized, no, I actually do like math. But yeah, I always was very like, either I wanted to be a scientist or I wanted to write comic books for Marvel. Kind of like my two driving goals when I was younger.
Those are decent goals. Yeah. Have you been keeping up with any of the Disney Plus TV shows for Marvel?
Yes, I have Disney Plus and I'm really enjoying it. Moon Knight is definitely, I'm interested to see where it goes.
Right. Yeah. Like I was disappointed, but then it got so interesting. So
without spoilers or anything like that, I will just say the last episode of Loki had me absolutely just yelling in delight.
Yes.
Without spoilers there, but also I'm predominantly an X-Men fan, so I'm really excited for the new animated series they're doing. I'm curious to see where that goes.
This is true. Yeah. Very exciting.
I'm a huge X-Men nerd, as anyone who's seen my Twitter sometimes sees me very excited about. Or like, I got into them when I was younger because they were, of all the comic books I had available, they were the one that had the most diverse cast and especially had the most women on the team.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So I was like, I wasn't as interested in Batman per se because the only cool girls were the villains. Not that they weren't awesome, but like X-Men, I just felt like had a lot more. And I'm like a nerd born of nerds. My whole family, like my mom has been a Star Trek fan since she was tiny, right? So like I grew up in a very nerdy environment, and all of us wound up in science of some sort.
So tough question before we move to the livestock stuff. Besides Professor X, who's your favorite X-Men?
Actually, Professor X isn't even on the list of my favorite.
Okay.
he's nowhere close. I'd honestly have to say that Nightcrawler has been my favorite.
Nightcrawler's very cool. Nightcrawler's very cool. Yes.
He's awesome. He's got like a lot of heart. He is really excited to see what happens in the Legion of X series coming out. But also, I just really love Madeline Pryor, who wasn't on the X-Men team, but she's got a very interesting history in the comics. And if you listen to Connor Goldsmith's Cerebro podcast, I was delighted to find out someone else loves her as much as I do. It's a really fun X-Men deep dive podcast.
Wow.
And then Emma Frost is always a queen. We'll always love her. So
Emma Frost is pretty cool too. So we did it.
Yes.
We got our nerd on, and that's that's very exciting to talk to another person about comic books and stuff like that. But we might alienate some of the people listening.
No.
So
no, certainly. So my friends can tell me the trick is getting me to stop. So certainly. Certainly can segue into livestock.
I'm that way with my colleagues. So one of the things you study is how you can predict how animals will grow. Now that's kind of a very general topic. Could you lead us through that a little bit?
Sure. So, when we're raising animals, like, if you've got dairy cattle, if you've got sheep, if you've got cows, you need to know how much food to set out for them. You need to know, especially if you're thinking about a pasture-based system, you want to know how can you get them to where they need to be in terms of going to market or producing enough milk, or they're going to be okay to support a pregnancy. And so that requires knowing how much energy they need, right?
Right.
And so we all have our energy that we need just to keep the lights on. That's just a function of how old we are, function of what's going on in our bodies, especially a function of how much protein we have in our bodies, because metabolism produces heat, right? And so that energy has to come from somewhere. But then also, if we want to have energy to put into stuff, like growing animals putting on protein and fat, or again, milk, to give cows enough energy to produce milk for us to turn into cheese, that energy has to come from their feed. So we need to know how much to give them and how to predict that. So I'm part of a team working to actually revise these national Australian livestock feeding standards to better predict this. So then people could say, have like a little app on their phone. And actually, we have some apps already that can help do this. Like, I've got these cattle. This is how much they weigh. This is how much I want them to weigh a month from now. This is how much food I have available. Is that going to be enough? Or do I need to give them some extra or change how I manage them? And so then when they enter that into their app, we'll ask them, like, what kind of feed, what type of animal, how heavy, everything like that. And then there'll be like a little engine running behind the scenes doing the math, sort of running the simulation going, well, no, if turns out you don't have enough, you're going to need to give them a bit of extra if you want them to go there, or no, you'll be fine. And so we've turned these growth patterns and all what's going on inside the body into a little dynamic series of equations that will just run and simulate the growth in these animals.
And that's for just cows or sheep and goats as well?
It's for cows and sheep.
Okay.
So, it could be expanded to goats, and there's other models like that too. A lot of countries have their own, or like the big ones in the game, especially are like, Europe, especially INRA out of France, they have their own. The UK has theirs. The US has theirs. I'm not sure what Canada uses. They might use, certainly like you don't have to, Brazil has their own, and, you have them from different animals. They're similar for chickens, for pigs, for all sorts of stuff.
I'm sure they have one of those for Bernese Mountain Dogs, because we don't want Bunsen to get, like, we want him to stay trim. So,
and that kind of math will go into the numbers that you see in terms of pet food recommendations on the bag of pet food.
Oh, okay.
And they say, feed so much. These kind of like feeding standards and guidelines do go behind those math that you see on the feed packages. Just like similar math for people.
Right.
Like the dietitians use will go on to, recommended daily allowance, or like, when they say, a growing kid needs this many grams of protein per day. Similar models are used to predict that.
Right. The serving size in this bag of chips is 3 chips, and then you feel sad about it.
Oh, yes. There's a really awesome podcast called Maintenance Pod that goes into some of the ways that can be a little, the numbers behind that can be very interesting and maybe a little weird, but also, the nice thing about livestock is my sister's getting her PhD and it's a human dietitian. I joke I'm the cow dietitian, right? I have a lot more control over what my subjects get per se, and a lot more intervention opportunities than her. Because I don't have to deal with, I don't have to tell people what to do so much. I can give them advice, but if I want a cow to eat something, I have a lot more opportunities to make sure that's what they're eating.
Yeah, well, like a cow's not like leaving the farm and going to get its own cow food from like, Quickie Cow Mart or something like that. So,
not if you have good fences, no.
That's interesting. So the next question I have for you, Doc, and if you're just joining us on Wisdom, I'm not sure if anybody's on Clubhouse yet. We have to We have to work on that. I'm sorry, Doc. Nobody's on Clubhouse
No
right
worries.
now.
No, it's fine.
It's the first
cool.
time. Yeah, it's the first time, but that's okay.
It's all good.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Dr. Holland, who's a livestock scientist. And then after our little brief interview here, we're going to open up the floor to questions from the audience. This leads into the next question about when animals eat food. One of the things that you have a lot of knowledge in is how what they eat can be made more sustainable from something called upcycling. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. Could you talk about that? Because that's fascinating.
Okay. So sure. So something to kind of upcycling is basically a combination of upgrading and recycling, right?
Okay.
So let's start with a little thought question. What's something like that you like to buy at the store, like for food?
Me?
Yes. Tell me something you like to get at the grocery store, like maybe not an animal product, like some sort of like snack or something.
I don't. What do I like to eat? Bananas?
Blueberries.
Blueberries. Okay, yeah, that's right. I will stick my face in a thing of blueberries. I love it so much.
Okay, I'm not actually 100% sure about blueberries.
Okay, that's a bad example.
No.
How about corn?
Okay, corn.
Okay.
So corn, we grow all this corn, right, for human consumption. And, we don't eat the stalk. It grows on these, living in Iowa, corn's everywhere, right? You have all these big stalks and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we only are, if you're thinking sweet corn, we're only interested in that bit. But also then if we turn corn into other things, like, you can make ethanol from corn. When we do that, we ferment away all the starch. And what's left behind are what's called distiller's grains. And that's basically a lot of the protein and minerals from the corn. And so when we're turning corn into different things, at each step of the processing, we have all these leftovers and byproducts. And sometimes we can turn those into other things for people, but a lot of times we can't. So we've got all this waste and leftovers and byproducts of things that were grown for human consumption, right?
Okay.
The amount of this produced has not really anything to do with livestock.
Yes.
But we have to do something with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we just let them out to rot or whatever, that would produce greenhouse gases that, we could plow them under into the soil maybe. Talking about like the leafy stubbles and stalks in the field, you could burn them maybe.
Not great.
No, but what we can do also is feed them to livestock, and especially cows and sheep and goats, because their digestive systems are so able to digest so many different things that we couldn't. We can turn that into food for them. And in fact, a lot of what we don't like to eat, that those stalks could be fiber. That distiller's grains is a great protein source, not just for cattle, for other livestock too. And so we rely on them to sort of recycle and clean up our messes. And when you think about, all the food in the grocery store, here in Canada produces a lot of canola, right?
Yes, canola is a big deal. I'm not sure if that's like we live on a farm actually. Chris, do you know what the Steels are planting this year?
No, but I should know soon.
Okay.
I saw them out there today.
Yeah, it's beautiful. When the canola is planted, the whole back of our property is just golden with canola.
It's a beautiful plant.
It's very pretty. Yeah.
Well, all the leafy bits and can be fed to livestock, but also when you process canola to get canola oil, only about 50% of that seed is oil.
Yeah.
The other half of it is canola meal. And that's another really good protein and energy source we can feed to cattle. And in fact, we can use sources like that to even replace grain in livestock diets as well.
Huh.
But these are all things, we can't really feed canola meal to people. There's other things in it that make it not tasty to us. Our guts are just not optimized to digest it. We're not really good at digesting a lot of complex things. Our guts are relatively small compared to our body size, but cattle and like sheep and goats have way bigger guts relative to their body size. They're able to digest things more completely, break down more complex things. And also ruminants have those microbes in their gut that are literally symbiotic with them to break it down everything. So they're not only taking things that are wastes from us, but then they're actually upgrading the protein quality, because the protein that goes in versus the protein that goes out, protein from animals is really digestible. Milk protein, that's why they say it's really vital for young humans to get animal sourced foods like, the milk builds healthy bones. Well, it's also a great source of protein, cheese, eggs, everything like that. So they're not just cleaning up our messes, they're actually improving the quality of what is produced. And I'm actually working on a grant right now with some other researchers here, trying to actually quantify for Australia how much of these byproducts go into the Australian livestock food supply and how much that contributes to the food supply here. So fingers crossed we're successful, but we've got a really cool team pulled together, and I think it would be really fun. And there's other researchers, like it's a very active topic of research in the States. Shout out to Emily Andrini, one of my cohort mates back at Davis, who was doing that, and Jim Olchin, who was one of my supervisors. There's a lot of, and Sarah Place also here on Twitter, who's in beef cattle science and talks a lot about it. Like it's a very active area of research, but we've been doing this for thousands of years. People have been keeping livestock to eat up kitchen scraps ever since. Like that's a major reason we have livestock. That's why a lot of people historically had chickens, right? So
they turned your household waste into eggs, and then eventually into a chicken meal when it was time.
Or yeah, exactly. Or goats, turning all the leftovers into milk. Mm-hmm. So it's a really important part of how we feed people, but it doesn't get talked enough about. And if as my colleague Dr. Kahn would say, what would happen if the cows went on strike? If we didn't have them to clean up our messes, we'd have to find uses for all these other things, and they might not add to the human food supply.
Figuring Out Family isn't your ordinary podcast. It's a completely new experience that helps you make your family the best it can be by giving you the deep insights to help your family thrive. You'll learn how to help your family have more productive conversations and manage life's disappointments too. You'll feel inspired by the special guests that are experts in their field of family relationships. Get valuable tips for dealing with difficult family members, repair broken relationships, improving your parenting skills, and keeping your children happy and healthy. Check it out now.
Yeah, we would. I don't know. I've walked through canola fields before, and the last thing I want to do is to start to chew on the green parts of it.
Nope, it's not. We couldn't get much of it, but actually, there's a type of forage canola that you can plant that's great. That's great as a pasture species for livestock.
Oh, cool!
And it also, and you can grow it in the off season from other crops. So then it can help with soil health. It can help with, providing extra income. It can help. Just, help keep, because, if you have bare soil, you have more erosion risks and everything like that. But also it's just really great fodder, especially in the cooler months. Mm-hmm. And there's all types, there's forage turnips, there's forage brassicas. Canola is a brassica, and brassicas are really important for human nutrition, but also they're very tasty to livestock. Just some of them you shouldn't feed to dairy cattle because it can make the milk taste a little funky. But if you're not planning on drinking the milk, then you're golden. And so there's a lot of active research into that, but also, just even from regular canola, you can feed the forage as fodder for livestock.
One thing I talked to my students today that I was going to chat with you, Doc. I teach high school kids, and I'm I do teach at a big city for Canada. And I'm you guys are all, I asked how many of them live in the city, and 100% of the kids live in the city, right? But I said, if you drive 15 minutes in any direction out of from Red Deer, you're going to see a cow, right? Where we live in the world, that's a big ranching area, Alberta, Canada. And one of the things maybe you can clarify or just talk to is, there's a lot of places in the foothills and a lot of places in Alberta that are super hilly and really rocky. The only thing that can turn bushes and grass into calories are animals. You can't grow wheat on the hills or in the rocky areas. Yeah.
Exactly.
So is that true? There's a lot of truth to that.
That's true. In fact, 70% of the world's agricultural land is like that. Either it's native grassland or it's just too marginal, too dry, too salty, too rocky, too hilly. The growing season's too short. The soil fertility is too poor, or it's just grasslands. And, the U.S. used to be covered by a lot of prairies, and now they survive in just patches. And I think that's real sad because same with California, it's under threat from fires, it's under threat from conversion to housing, but it's all these beautiful, diverse grasslands that produce habitat for all these different species. Cattle grazing, they sort of help break up, right? They keep plants from taking over too much. They help keep a nice diverse species mix. They provide fertilizer. They provide habitat for other animals. In fact, actually last year when I was up in Queensland, one of the things that was really cool is that birds will follow the cattle, because when the cattle will move, just moving around during their day, or they see people think, oh, you're bringing treats, and kind of run over to the four-wheeler, or, they say, oh, maybe you'll move us to a different paddock or whatever. The movement of these animals will kick up all these bugs, and then you'll just see the birds just swooping down, going after all the bugs kicked up by the livestock. And so you get these really diverse, biodiverse landscapes because of this. And that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's, again, like growing up near the Everglades, right? Florida, very big on don't mess with the wildlife. They were here first, very big on conservation. And one of the things I love about working with ruminants is that it really meshes well with my love of conservation and my love of biodiversity, because we're creating these diverse landscapes that while we're managing them, and we're managing how we're moving livestock around them, we're still providing all this habitat for all these other animals to coexist.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also feeding people. And that's the important thing. We don't have enough land that's arable to feed people without having livestock. We just don't. Like I said, 70%. And a lot of that, especially like marginal land, that's in areas which might have more concerns about food supply. So it's just really vital worldwide. But also, maybe you could, if you put like a bunch of fertilizer on it, if you irrigated everything, maybe you could grow some stuff, but then you'd be getting rid of the ecosystem that was already there. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah. So that's the point I try to make to students, because we get like, it's not really in chemistry that we have this debate. It's in general science where we talk about, why are there so many cows in the foothills? And
Mm-hmm.
it's because it's like rocky and scrubby and nothing grows there. Like you could bulldoze all of the foothills flat and put a whole bunch of fertilizer there to grow whatever. But you're talking about like billions and billions of dollars to change the landscape and untold damages to the ecosystem that's already there. Or just you have like herds of cattle that just eat all the grass and they do fine. So that's
and where it's too rocky or steep for cattle, you can put sheep and goats. So there's and then in fact, because they all have sort of different preferred diets, rotating between species is also another good way too.
Agriculture is so interesting the more you talk about it, and very complicated. Like it is not like a simple, people think farmers sometimes are not intelligent. Like they just go get their cow. No, there's like tons of science that goes into properly raising animals for their welfare. So, and then folks like you,
Well, and I'm very blessed to have a lot of awesome colleagues. Like I said, I'm a city kid, right? We lived in Iowa, but we're still like, in town. But I still very much I feel like, no offense to Iowa, but I was much more interested in like moving once I graduated. But Iowa State University is an amazing school. And, and I learned a lot, and I had a lot of teachers who were willing to help me play catch up, but also just growing up in Florida, like I said, with all the wildlife and everything around that, you get a real appreciation for it. And then I've been very lucky also to have colleagues like in my life, but also on Twitter. Like I said, my colleague, Shep, gave me the nickname Doc Holland after I graduated. He does a lot of really cool work with regenerative grazing with sheep and cattle and rare breeds of sheep and cattle. And like when I got on, I was on Twitter, especially in grad school, like I started following more and more people that raised livestock and just learning from them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And social media has just made it so much easier to see how people are raising their livestock and what they're doing. There's a lot of really cool people. My colleague, Dan Macon, who's also on Twitter, is Flying Mule Sheep, I think. He also has like a blog where he talks about his work with his dogs, because he has livestock protection dogs, and he does research into how to use those to help protect livestock. Just all this really cool stuff that you can now see on Twitter and learn from. And same moving here to Australia, getting to talk to producers, whether in person or over Zoom. It's been awesome. We took some students on a field trip a couple of weeks ago to a cattle operation. And that was really fun, just walking around the pastures and seeing all the different plants.
Yeah, because they grow natively, like they're just there, right?
Yeah, or some of them are managed, you can add stuff in. So,
you can add, right. Okay. True.
Like you can have like native pastures too, but you can also have managed pastures where you still have like a mix of, grasses and shrubs and legumes. You can have like clovers
Right.
and
You'd plant clovers.
ryegrasses or brassicas in, or you can have, like there's kinds like Ceradella, Lucana. There's some more tropical legumes that we're doing research into here in Australia that are really cool. That are more trying to help people hedge against climate change. So like Lucana is a tree legume. But there's like more sort of shrubby legumes like Ceradella. There's a lot of different things you can mix in with grasses, even like a planted managed pasture that still have that diverse mix and still provide that kind of habitat. It's not like I teach my students, monocultures like that, single species pastures, you're not going to be getting the most out of that operation, but also you're not then, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to drought or to other, too much water, too little. And also then they've all got the same growing season. If you want to feed animals on pasture, you need a mix of species, whether they're there naturally or you add them in, that have those different waves of growing seasons and quality and habitats.
Again,
So
it's just
really cool.
It's complicated. It sounds a little bit more complicated than Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley, like the farming games that I play.
I joke that I can't play Stardew Valley because it reminds me too much of work.
Oh,
Like it is definitely more complicated, but I do, yeah. But that's just kind of the funny thing. It's like, oh, look after your crops, look after the animals, go to the feed store. Oh,
it's work.
Maybe I'll play Hades instead.
If you're just joining us now on any of the social audio platforms we're on, we're talking to Dr. Holland, who's a livestock scientist. This is Science Chat, and it runs every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, whatever time that is for anybody listening. Apparently it's tomorrow for Dr. Holland because she's in Australia. My next question that's going to fascinate people, I think, could we talk a little bit about cow digestion? Sure. How bananas it is. Could you talk to us about that?
Sure. So, a fun fact, cows run on vinegar.
What? Yes.
So, like I said, right, the cows. So, actually, one quick question for you, though. How many stomachs does a cow have?
4.
Bunsen bark twice. 2.
Nope. 1. Our heart has 4 chambers. We don't say we have 4 hearts.
Oh.
Well, it's the same with the cow's stomach. It is one stomach. It just has multiple chambers.
That's a trick question, Doc.
Yes, it is. And it's something that one of my professors used to use on everyone. So I'm carrying on the tradition. I use it on my own students too.
You know what? I do that too. I do. Okay, I'll be quiet. I do that too to my students.
Yeah. I feel once I started teaching, I realized, how many of the jokes I repeated from my professors or how many of the, you remember what you enjoyed when you were a student and use that to build as you teach. And I have an excellent colleague here, Dr. Fran Cowley, who's been teaching me sort of how to develop lectures and improving my teaching skills. And she's been great, but, and it's really fun. But
do you have a good cow joke before we go on? Do you have one right off the top of your head?
Okay. Yeah, actually. Why can't cows wear flip-flops?
Why can't cows wear flip-flops? I don't know.
Because they lactose.
Oh. That's pretty good. Okay, sorry. Back to cows running. That's fine. Back to cows running on vinegar.
So the big stomach that we mostly pay attention to is the rumen, and that's the biggest chamber of the stomach.
Okay.
And that is like a big anaerobic fermentation vat. It's like sort of, compost heaps right in your garden. They produce a lot of heat. They break down things. Cows sort of have an internal compost heap where the microbes in their stomach break down all this plant matter into things that they can use. And so especially the forage that they eat, the microbes in their stomach produce acetic acid, which is vinegar, as well as other short-chain carbon compounds called volatile fatty acids, which are just basically, again, just, little short-chain carbon compounds that are very easily absorbed across the stomach wall. But the majority for cattle and sheep is acetic acid. So cows absorb vinegar across their stomach wall, and then they can turn that into energy. And it also serves as a carbon source for building dairy fat. So the fat in your cheese comes from forage, but it was briefly vinegar.
Okay.
So if you're eating like a tomato and cheese salad with vinaigrette, that's sort of the same carbon in different forms all saying hi to each other.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the microbes also produce protein. The microbes get washed out of the rumen over time and make it to the acid stomach, which is more like our stomach. And so then they can digest that protein, but also the protein in their feed. So anything that gets to the lower parts of the gut, the microbes have had to go at it first, or, you know, it might be things that they can't digest. But a lot of the magic happens. A lot of the reason why that they can eat all these different things we can't is because they have the room and they have this big fermentation vat in the stomach that has the microbes that are symbiotic with them that break down all these different things. And that's really cool. And we can do things to encourage the kind of microbes we want or discourage the kind of microbes we don't. There's even little predators in that ecosystem. There's protozoa in there, which will predate on other bacteria. Like, well, they're not bacteria, but you know what I mean? They'll eat bacteria.
Yeah.
There's all different things. You know, we can feed different things to help reduce methane or to help shift things towards like different fermentation patterns. You know, we can also give them like probiotics and prebiotics, like you might get in your vitamins or at the store, like to help their gut health.
Right.
There's a lot of really cool things, but it all comes back to that really amazing fermentation vat in their stomach and the microbes that they've got with them. And it definitely differs between species too, as well as the ability of animals to detoxify things too. So like goats can eat poison ivy.
They are bananas, aren't they? Goats.
That's why some places of the States, you'll see rent-a-goat signs for like, you know, you can rent goats to come and clear up all your brush and forage and everything like that.
Yeah, they'll eat everything.
They'll eat kudzu, which is great.
Yeah, kudzu. It's like an invasive species, right?
Oh, it definitely is. And like they can't, you know, like it's one of those kill it with fire kind of things, or in this case, you know, turn goats on it. But also, you know, but then like, and they have different mouth anatomy too. So cows have those very big, long tongues, almost like, you know, they're kind of like cats in some ways. And one of them has got the big, long, rough tongue. So they can rip and grab things. And that's sort of how they investigate the world, by licking things. But sheep can be a bit more precise and nibble. So sheep can actually nibble the flowers off of thistles.
Oh.
And that's kind of like sheep candy. And so they have, you know, cattle are more grazers and sheep and goats are a bit more like browsers. In fact, goats kind of forage a bit similarly to deer in some ways. So they all kind of have their own niche in the ecosystem and different things they like to eat.
Wow. Yeah, we went on a hike.
Really cool.
We went on a hike during the summer, Doc, and people probably who follow us will remember we came across like a movable pen of goats. There's like 25 goats, and they were mowing down everything. Like they were using them as organic lawnmowers, and they would just eat all the grass. And the guy was there with his dog, and they would just move the goats to the next thing, and they would just eat it all down. So. They were experimenting with having a guy and his goats instead of a lawnmower out there.
You can do that with sheep too. And in fact, like some places are moving more towards that instead of lawnmowers and leaf blowers and everything. And I think that's great because then you're not using fossil fuels as much, less noisy. You get fertilizer. You know, I think it's great. So I'm very much pro, you know. And that's what actually some of the more decorative breeds of livestock were bred for, that because people wanted basically lawn mowers, right? They wanted
lawn mowers.
They wanted lawn care, animals to look cute out grazing and everything like that. So it's you know, and I think that's great. I personally would much prefer that versus hearing like lawnmowers all the time.
Well, I would personally prefer not to have to mow as much as I do. I was just talking to Chris today about it. I'm going to have to start mowing, and I hate it. I don't know. Should we get some goats, Chris?
I'm for goats, yes. But then all my beautiful flower beds will be like too bad.
Well, yeah, they'll eat everything. That's true.
Yeah, you'd have to figure out a way, or sheep, or you know, I joked once maybe I should try and convince my landlord as well, because I don't think anyone really enjoys mowing.
No.
But you know, but like having these kind of put and take systems, like, you know, rent a goat, rent a sheep, or whatever, like people who do this kind of targeted grazing, that's like a really growing area, and I think that's really awesome. I know some folks who do it. Like I said, when I used to take the train into San Francisco, I'd see goats grazing along the train tracks. You know, it's really awesome, and it's definitely something that, you know, try to encourage it to happen more locally. I think it's something people should try to be promoting.
I love it.
It's a lot. Yeah, and it's a lot for me. I feel like it's a lot better an option than, you know, sending people in with all these different chemicals, or just, you know, weed whackers and lawnmowers and everything going all the time. But you know, that's just me. I personally find I don't like hearing lawnmowers all the time either. So
No, they're noise, part of noise pollution. I agree.
Exactly. And also just the few, and also not that like, but the fumes from like lawnmowers and weed whackers and everything versus like some methane from, ruminants. I feel like in terms of like particulate pollution, it might be a bit more on the side of, like I said, sheep and goats and everything. But also I'm biased because I would much rather hear sheep and goats, even if like the goats are yelling or whatever.
They're screaming goats.
Well, like when we were doing our sheep experiment, like we had half the barn and then the other half was with goats, and the goats knew that we were not there to feed them. The goats knew that their people would be along shortly to feed. We just had to sort of stagger who was feeding and when, because there were only a couple scales in the feed weighing area. And so when we'd start feeding the sheep, the goats on the other side would start yelling, just like, like my cats like to yell at me when they've got food. They would just be like, why can't we get that? Why do you have to give that to them? We want that. And, even if you've got food, I can see it in your bunk. That doesn't matter because you have different food. That could be better. That could be tastier. And it's just like dogs, and it's just like your pets. It doesn't matter if they've got food. If they see someone else getting food, they're going to want it and they're going to be interested because it could be better. They don't know.
They don't know. That's right. I'm like that at a restaurant. I'm like, what did they get? Oh, maybe I should have got that.
One of my cats tried to go for my oatmeal last night. I'm like, they're obligate carnivores. I don't understand why they found my little overnight oats so fascinating, but I was actually shoving them both away.
Yeah, Ginger ate through a bag and ate a bunch of bread. She ate like 4 slices of bread, like a little cat bites out of them. I can't believe what happened. Anyways, I've got two final questions, and one is on point with what we're talking about. Sure. But the first one is, on the podcast, we talked about how you had a favorite type of cow. And I loved this story. I don't know if your favorite type of cow has changed, but could you tell everybody what your favorite type of cow is?
I just really love Jerseys. They are a breed of dairy cattle. They're very sweet. They, I haven't like worked them professionally as much, but field trips with my family used to get milk from a Jersey and Brown Swiss dairy nearby. My mom thinks they're nice. Just they're sweet. They're easier to work with, certainly, for like in classes and everything, because I'm short. I'm like 5'4", and Holsteins are very tall. Jerseys are smaller framed, but also they're just very sweet, and they've got kind of the personality of like a big goofy dog, right? They like to lick everything. They're maybe a little ditzy, but they're really sweethearts. And then when I was in grad school, my friend Kim, she actually had a pet Jersey steer named Mike. And when I was finishing up my PhD, writing up everything, it's very stressful. When I needed cow cuddles as a break, I used to go over and pet Mike, and I'd lean on the fence and he'd just come over and start licking my arms, be like, it's like being loved on by a belt sander. But he just wanted to be cuddled and be patted, and they're very friendly. And certainly all breeds have something to recommend them, and they can all be quite sweet. But I just think Jersey personalities are really sweet, and also they produce milk that has a lot of more fat in it, and so it's more suited to making things like cheese. But also, just like I said, they're small and goofy, and I think they're quite cute. So but I also think Hereford cattle also look quite pretty, and they can, and especially in the States, they've been selected to be a bit more on the gentle side of things. So every breed of dog and cat, every breed has something that people love about it.
I love cow noses. Whenever I go up to a cow, I just love to touch their noses. Oh my goodness.
It's so sweet. Yeah. They're so sweet and soft, and it's being groomed by a cow is fun. It's just like a giant cat, right? They're just they just want,
like when they lick you.
They want the salt. It's
they want to stick
it. Tongues.
Yeah, they lick you with their giant tongues because you're salty, right? That's true? I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's what's happened. Or they want to. Or you might have feed dust on your feet, or they just want to investigate, because that's how they investigate the world, with their tongues.
Oh my goodness, they're like a toddler.
Yeah. Yep. Or like I said, like cats, they like to like investigate things. They, cats maybe use their paws a bit more, but they like to fall asleep in really weird positions. They haven't evolved to get glucose from their diet, so cats and cows both make glucose only when they need it. Cats make it from protein. Cattle can make it from protein, but also from different things. They spend a lot of time grooming themselves and each other. There's more similarities than you'd think, and I love both.
And they're kind of lazy.
I mean, they have to spend a lot of time just like dealing with their food, right? They have to spend a lot of time just chewing their cud. They're efficient. I think, and cats, they have to spend like a lot of time just resting or just chilling. That's a cat thing. But with cows, they do have to spend a good chunk of time ruminating because they have to bring their food up and chew it and bring it back down.
That's
and that
true.
introduces saliva. And so it's not lazy. They're just taking their time with their meals.
There you
That's
go.
how they're built.
There you go. Well, we're at that time where I'm going to ask anybody that has a question for Doc Holland to come up to the stage, either on Twitter Spaces, on Wisdom. You could ask to come up and ask a question if you've been thinking about cows or sheep or goats. We'll keep things on topic. Now, again, we're going to bring folks up that we at least on Twitter Spaces, that we know who they are. Keep your questions on point. So we have Doc, who's a livestock scientist. If you'd like to ask a question, request to speak on any of the social platforms. And looks like Chris has brought some folks up on Twitter. Go ahead. Who's first, Chris? Was it Liz?
It's Liz, Kathy, and then Tracy's on deck.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Yay, my turn. So hey, Doc, I have a silly question and a somewhat serious question. So I have heard, you kind of touched on actually both my questions, but I'm still going to ask them anyway. Is it true that cows are just kind of like giant dogs, like they're cuddly and they have people? And is that all cows? Like, could I go hang out with one? Or...
Did you hear that, Doc?
No, I didn't. I wasn't able to hear anything.
You didn't hear anything?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Let's try. Liz, ask your question one more time. Doc, can you hear my voice?
Yes. Yeah, I could just see, like, for everyone else, see little connecting things.
Oh, it says connecting on yours. It's not connected yet?
Mm-hmm.
It's just spinning.
I guess not, but
It's just spinning.
Try again, or maybe if you could repeat it, either or.
Do you see Liz? It's Liz gets to face the IRB now. Is it spinning saying connecting?
Yes. Yep.
So not connected yet.
Nope. Sorry.
Okay. Liz, ask your question again, and then I might have to relay it. There could be some issue connecting as a speaker. Who knows?
Before Liz, you ask your question, can you maybe just say a few words to see if she can hear you or not?
Can you hear me now?
Did you hear that, Doc?
Nope, I didn't. It sounds like you might just have to relay the question. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
How about, do you see Kathy Zerker or is Kathy Zerker spinning?
I still just see everyone, like there's like 4 or 5 people who are spinning. Sorry.
Weird. Okay. Liz's question is, she asked, are cows like giant dogs? They like to cuddle. And I think I missed the end of it. I was messing around on Spaces or on Wisdom. Did I get the gist of it there?
Yes.
She was wondering if like she could go into like a field of cows and experience the same, like if she could just go up to a cow, that they would all be like that, all be kind of fun and like that.
Gotcha. So, like I said, there's similarities with cows, like between cats and dogs per se, but do not go up to livestock you do not know. Do not, don't go up to a dog or cat you don't know either. In general, it's a better thing, but do not go near livestock that you do not know, because like all these caveats, with them being friendly and sweet, that's because they know me. They recognize me, and I have learned how to safely handle and be around them in a respectful way with manners. Like people who work with horses have been trained to work around horses and know their blind spots and their flight zones and how to work around them with, safe horse manners. Same thing with livestock. So all the livestock I've interacted with that, I've gotten to be friendly with, it's because, they recognize me as someone who brings food. They recognize me as a safe person, and it takes time. If you were just to go up to random livestock, no, they'd probably run. They could get spooked. They could injure themselves. They could injure you. They don't know that, cows are bigger than people. Some sheep are bigger than people. But certainly met sheep heavier than me. They don't realize that. Even a cow that wants to play, the way cows play, kind of like, charging at each other, like, being playful, can still hurt people. So if you want to get friendly with a cow, the best way to do it is to find like, maybe there might be a dairy near you that has an open day. And sometimes they'll have the calves in their little calf pens, and then the cows will come up to the fence and want to like chew on your jeans through the fence. It's very sweet. Cows and sheep both love to chew on denim, and I'm not sure why, but that's why I don't wear good jeans to the barn. But like, no, you would want to be very careful, and you definitely would not want to go up and just like randomly. You would, if people like will introduce you, and then also don't go near livestock alone. Again, it's just, I've taken all these safe handling courses. I've helped teach people how to safely handle livestock, but there's just things that could go wrong. Just not because of any harm or anything, just because you might not know that you've spooked them, or they're just not used to you. But a lot of dairies will, like I said, will have open days where people can come and meet the animals, or like if you go to a state fair or a local fair or an open day at a local university, they'll have animals that are more used to being handled by humans, and especially by strange humans. But like, even when we had our last experiment, the sheep recognized who were their people. And when we had visitors come through the barn, they were immediately like, who are these people? And they were much more likely to spook. They
and then run.
Exactly. And then that can cause problems for them and yourself. And, we don't want anyone to get injured. But, it's like with pets, too. One of my cats is very friendly whenever someone else comes by, but the other one hides behind the couch for a lot longer. It's just, in this case, if Rogue decides to hide behind the couch, she's not likely to run someone over doing it. So just, be safe around animals. Do not just go up to random animals in general, but especially do not go up to random livestock. There can be fatal accidents, and a lot of those can happen because proper handling and safe handling procedures weren't happening. So, but like I said, there are opportunities to get up and close and cuddly with animals if you'd like, just, the proper opportunities like field days and open days.
I believe you said a stat that was quite sobering, that more people are killed by cows than by sharks in the United States.
Yes, exactly. That's just, people come into contact with a lot more often with cows too. So it's partially just a chance. It's like more accidents happen at home, right? Because you're more often near your home. But, it is like, you have to be safe. It's for their safety and for yours. But they don't realize that they're bigger than you. And like, I've had steers who thought they were being playful and fun, but could have done injury.
Yeah, they're they're so big, right? Like,
yeah, and same with horses.
Horses too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, Bunsen's big, and like when he gets rambunctious, if he runs into you, can knock you over. But Bunsen's nowhere near the size of a cow. It's not even close.
And cows will get the zoomies, same as dogs will. And if you think about getting out of the way of a big dog when it's got the zoomies, think about having to get out of the way of a steer. Like it's cute to watch, but
it's
watch from
so cute. It's so cute when cows get the zoomies because they're so big and awkward.
It's adorable, but adorable from a distance.
Yeah.
Liz, but love them from afar.
Love them from afar. But if they're up close to a fence and it's safe, make sure you pet their nose because it's super cute.
Not unless you are with the person who owns those animals and you are careful.
True.
And also the fence might be electrified and you don't know it. So
look at all these tips.
Just like I said, just don't. I don't want. They're cute and great, but like I've seen too many people. No one wants to wind up injured because of that, and like I said, or the animals getting injured or anything like that. So I help teach people how to handle livestock safety. I've taken a bunch of safe handling courses. I've seen what happens when people don't. I had a horse step on my foot pretty hard once in a uni class, and I was lucky. It was pretty muddy, so it wasn't worse. And
yeah, that could break your foot.
Exactly. No, I got lucky, and that's because I was trying to teach her baby horse manners, and the mama snuck up behind me. That was.
I apologize. I misspoke. I did mean to say if they're at the fence and you're there with somebody who knows who the cows are. Yeah, don't go rogue and seek out random cows. That's the pro tip.
There also might be guard dogs or guard animals who will then think that you're trying to steal or harass their animals, and if growing with the attitude is like, if you mess with wildlife, that's on you, and what happens is on you. Here's safe ways to not mess with wildlife, and that applies to livestock as well. You don't want something bad to happen to them because you thought it would be fun to go up and pet them, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, those are that's great points.
And that's,
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
And that's what happens. That's what, like, the animal gets blamed for doing a behavior that's natural to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. And the same thing applies to bears, right, or other wild critters that get too habituated to humans. Like, even if the animals, we don't want wild animals to think that they're tame, because then they might do something that's natural for them but bad for us. And same with animals, with livestock. Even if they're really sweet and used to humans, you still can't. That's not going to prevent things from happening. You just have to be very careful.
Yeah, they're just so big. Yeah, they're just so
but
big.
even sheep. I mean, even sheep could still take out a kneecap or knock you over or whatever.
Oh, they could break your leg in a second. Yeah.
We had actually a lamb decide he was going to headbutt the bottom of a bucket, and he punched clean through the bucket. And we were just very glad it wasn't someone's kneecap. And that's just because he was being impatient. He was. It was his turn to be fed, but he was being a little impatient, decided to headbutt the bucket and broke it. Even little animals can still do. I mean, the hooves can, if you get run over by like a goat or a sheep, the hooves can still do some damage.
Liz,
goats do like to run into things.
Liz, did that answer your question? It might be a little disappointing.
Yeah, it's okay. Do we have time for me to ask another quick question?
Yeah, I don't know if the doc can hear you though. Are the people still? You can't hear?
I can't hear. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll figure it out. It's all technology. It's all good. Liz, what's your follow-up question?
Is it true?
Is it true?
According to members of our government, a big effect on climate change is cow farts.
Is it true that cow farts contribute to climate change?
Okay, so first of all, it's not the farts, it comes from their stomach. So, and it's not burps either, because it kind of comes up as they bring up the cut. Otherwise, burping cattle would just be like a sign for, any coyote in the area to be like, hey, steak buffet here. And so they do produce methane in their stomach as a byproduct of the fermentation, just like, again, your compost heap would produce methane as things decompose or get broken down by microbes. So, and that does contribute to climate change. It is a source of methane in the atmosphere. It's sort of the cost of eating things that we can't use, right? They have all these like amazing adaptations, but to have all these chemical reactions keep going, they have to get rid of all the extra hydrogen that builds up. And so the microbes dispose of that as methane, which gets exhaled, and that can build up in the atmosphere from climate change. And there's things we can feed to cattle to reduce the methane. But it's also an important thing to note in context that actually a lot of the methane in the atmosphere also comes from fossil fuel use. And actually last year, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change actually sort of changed how they look at the math and reflected the fact that fossil fuel methane and methane from biological processes actually affect the environment differently. And so digging up old carbon out of the ground that was locked away for millions of years in fossil fuels and bringing it back into the atmosphere is overloading the atmosphere with carbon beyond our planet's abilities to naturally sort of buffer. Whereas if you've got methane in the atmosphere from that was there to begin with, the carbon in plants, animals eat it, goes back out as methane and carbon dioxide, gets absorbed back through the plants, and keeps cycling around, whether it's cows or us eating the plants. And the earth has an ability to sort of buffer that naturally. Now, certainly, we need to reduce the amount of methane in the gas in the atmosphere overall. And cows, like I said, and other things that produce methane do contribute to those climate changes as well. But it's also worth noting that, in terms of contribution to climate change worldwide, the fossil fuel industries and electricity are also huge sources. So yes, the answer is yes, but you kind of have to put it in the context of also there's things we can do to reduce it. And we are actually, like I said, there's different things we can feed them to reduce their methane. But also, again, it's sort of the cost of their metabolism, right? Of turning all these things that we can't eat into things we can. And so how to balance feeding everyone while reducing these methane emissions and reducing overall greenhouse gas emissions in the environment is something that I work on, my colleagues do. And so part of it is just sort of looking at what are the options we have to feed people that reduce total emissions. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of some of the modeling work I do. So the short answer is yes, they do. The long answer is yes, they do. And there's ways to reduce it, but also there's, you kind of need you can't just focus on one little thing. You kind of have to tackle a bunch of different things at once. because otherwise you might, if you reduce in one area, you want to make sure that you're not increasing somewhere else. And that's the tricky problem. It's not a race to the bottom. It's sort of finding the optimal solution.
It's a bit nuanced.
It's very nuanced, and it doesn't get discussed. When people are discussing it, it doesn't get nuanced enough. Mm-hmm. And like I said with the example earlier, so like if we didn't have cows and sheep to eat all the canola leftovers, what would we do with them, and what would be our other options, and how would that impact greenhouse gas emissions and the human food supply? And in some cases, we don't know. That's kind of why we're writing this grant, to sort of try and do those maths to figure out, what would happen if we did this or this or this, mm-hmm. and what would be the impact on emissions, but also the human food supply, land use. So it's cool. And it's a really complex problem that a lot of scientists around the world are tackling. And my colleagues are doing an amazing job. We're coming up with all these different ways to reduce emissions and make animals more efficient and sustainable. But it's a really complex problem.
Got it.
But that's good. Complex problems are good. Just means they're fun to tackle. It's important.
Liz gave you a clap, Doc. I think that was.
Yes, I saw the emoji. Thank you.
Oh, you saw the emoji, right? Okay, so I saw
an emoji from someone. I think
you can see emoji. You can see emoji. You just can't hear them. Okay.
Sorry.
I think we'll go to Kathy, and then is Paula next, Chris, and then Tracy, or is it Kathy, Tracy, Paula? I don't know.
Well, let's first honor time. It is the top of the hour.
Oh, right. Yes.
If we want to stay longer, I can. I set aside time, so it's
okay. We'll get through
more questions.
We'll get through the questions if that's okay. Do you have another 20 minutes?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, perfect.
So, I bought like I said, I told my work that I was doing this day, and they were quite happy. So yeah, I've blocked off time, so no worries on time.
Sounds
okay.
Good.
So Kathy, Tracy, Paula.
Okay.
Okay, first, for Jason, if you're counting how many people are here, you need to count 2 at our house, because my husband has a PhD in animal nutrition from Purdue. And so
I still didn't hear that. Sorry.
Okay.
I think we're just going to have to relay the question.
Really interested in listening.
Kathy's husband has a PhD in animal nutrition, and they're listening.
Oh, cool. That's exciting.
But my question is, there's a lot of hype around grass-fed and grass-grazed cows and the cheese that comes from them and so forth. Is there a significant difference in milk and cheese and so forth from grass-fed versus grain-fed?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, I'll relay the question. Kathy asked, is there much difference, or is there a difference between livestock that are fed grass-fed versus grain-fed?
The healthiest food you can eat is the food you grow yourself. And on the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, we tell you how to grow that healthy food as well as beautiful flowers. Plus, we tell you the things the nurseries don't want you to know.
There are no scientifically based studies that show that kelp meal or seaweed have any desirable effects on plants.
And we answer your garden questions. Well, at least we try to.
I have some nandinas that spread. How can I kill them?
You can't. Just move. That's the only way. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. It's out every Tuesday and Friday. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. More info at gardenbasics.net.
Okay. So, like in terms of meat quality, or in terms of sustainability, in terms of what, I guess?
Cheese, butter, milk.
Cheese, butter. I guess. Is there something specific you're looking for, Kathy, or just is there a difference even?
It was dairy. Dairy products, at least around here in Minnesota, are really hyped if they're grass-fed, come from grass-fed cows. And I want to know if there's really a difference between the two.
So just general differences between the two, Doc.
Okay. So there are some, but at the same time, the important thing to note is that even grain-fed animals, they're not grain-fed their whole lives. They are grain-fed for the last little bit of their lives. So for most of their life, they're on pasture just as regular, same as anything else, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're feeding them grain, it's because we want to get them to that, nice, tasty level of fatness. And feeding them grain at the right time can help us get there sooner. But for most of their life, they are on pasture, same as grass-finished animals. So that said, there can be differences in flavor, and then also, animals out in pasture might take longer to reach market weight and specifications than grain finished animals. So they'll be a little older at harvest. So that might affect things a bit. They might be a bit leaner. So there are differences. There can be differences. Again, it depends on when the producer says, okay, you're off to freezer camp. It depends on when they sort of hit the stop button. But there can be differences in fatness. There can be differences in flavor, and it all just kind of depends on what you like. For me, there is a distinct, I can taste the difference between grass and grain finished animals. And I think they both taste really good. Some people, might find that grass finished animals taste different. They may or may not like it. Same with grain finished. So, and same with the effects on butter and cheese and everything like that. Pasture raised dairy, depending on what kind of pasture they're eating, there might be some changes to, the flavor profile of the products, but then also how the cheese and butter is processed after the milk has been milked can affect that too. Again, there are some differences in the fat composition between grass and grain finished animals, but it's not huge, I guess. In terms of flavor differences and culinary differences, there can be. In terms of health impacts, not as much really. Or like I said, grain finished animals might be somewhat leaner, depending on how they're marketed and raised. But again, when you're talking about grain finishing, it's the last couple hundred days of the animal's life and possibly even shorter. So for most of their lives, they've been raised pretty similarly.
So interesting. Kathy says in Minnesota, there's hype around the grass-fed animal as opposed to the grain-fed. So what would be kind of the reasoning behind the hype and the push?
There's hype around it.
Yeah, it's pretty much my view. It is a way of market differentiation. Like I said, there can be flavor differences, and some people are willing to pay more for those flavor differences. Just I am willing to pay more for Jersey milk at the store, or cheese. Really, think about the price difference between really fancy smoked cheddar versus your regular cheddar slices. There can be differences in flavor. The pasture production system, again, people might want to support pasture finished agriculture because the animals might be a little older. So, that can lead to differences in quality and texture that people can really like. But some of that is hype, in the sense that they've been on, they haven't been on grain their whole lives. They've been on pasture for a lot of their life too. So it's, some of it is distinct differences that people can decide, oh, I like this, I want to do this, or, I'm not as fond of it. And like I said, grass finished animals can have less fat. So if you're looking into less fat, that could be important to you. But, some of that also is just people sort of trying to make their products stand out. And that's a really important thing of marketing. You think about, product differentiation. People want to make their products stand out so that they can attract people's eyes, or, well, this is spiffier. Especially think about all the hundreds of types of cheese out there. Cheese is a great example of that kind of differentiation. But you can see that on the meat side of things too.
There's so many different types of cheese. It's overwhelming. Chris gets fancy cheese at Christmas, and it gives me anxiety. I will not shop for cheese.
Australia, actually, 40% of our milk goes to cheese making, and we export a lot of cheese.
Goodness.
We're number 3 or number 4 in world dairy exports.
That is too much cheese.
No, it's cheese is wonderful, but I actually have a tutorial I'm teaching tomorrow on market differentiation and cheese marketing, where I printed off all these cheese labels from the grocery store, and I'm going to have them as groups look at all the labels and how are they trying to market this? Why is this cheese different than the other cheese in price? How does the label reflect that? What do they use in terms of marketing to show there's a special? This is Tasmanian blue cheese, double cream, or this cheese is imported from Spain, and it's all that. It's a huge thing, and cheese is a big money maker. Tasmania actually has a pretty cool dairy industry because they've got a good climate for it. And
oh my goodness.
But so exactly when I lived in the States, I remember seeing Australian cheese and it had a crocodile on the label. So I was like, oh, I'll buy that. It's from Australia. It's got a crocodile on the label. Oh, I'll try that. But cheese is big money for dairy producers, especially
premium,
cheese,
right?
Fancy cheese. Exactly.
Yeah.
And part of that also takes a lot of milk to make cheese. I have students make mozzarella for the lab practical, and it's amazing how, 4 kilos of milk to produce less than 1 kilo of mozzarella. So part of it's just all the resources and time that goes into it. But part of it is also just it's easier to make your product stand out versus like, milk at the supermarket. And that's important for dairy producers and their income and being able to stay in business, because livestock production is a very narrow margin industry. Yep. So anything you can do to make yourself stand out can help. Yeah, the margins are very, very slim. Growing up in rural Alberta, I knew that a lot of my friends were farm family kids. So, yeah. Okay, so I think we answered Kathy's question. Are you happy with the answer, Kathy?
Yes, I am. Tom and I are both vegetarians, so thank you for the dairy answers.
Oh, so my opinions as to stuff like are my own, I admit. So like I said, when I say something, I prefer something or whatever, that's like my own opinion stating there too in some ways. Perfect. Okay, Chris, who's next on our speakers?
Tracy and then Paula.
Okay, Tracy, then Paula.
Hi. So I don't know if Jason asked this, but I wanted to know if she had any pet stories. And I also wanted to say that it's cool that her favorite cow is Jersey cows, being from New Jersey, even though they probably named it after the island.
All right. So Doc, you probably didn't hear that question. I'll have to. No, sorry. It's all good. So Tracy asked, we didn't get to it with the interview section. She wanted to know if you had a pet story that you could share with us. And the second thing is she liked that your favorite cow was Jersey, even though maybe they named it after the island. I'm not sure. They did. That's where they're from. Oh, okay. They're called a Channel Island breed. So there's like little Channel Islands in the UK. So Jersey and Guernsey, and Jerseys and Guernseys were named after their respective islands. So they, it would be cool to actually go and visit there sometime. That would be fun. Especially if I get over there. But yeah, no, they're named after where they're from. So that's just like the Angus cow is actually also called the Aberdeen Angus because it's a Scottish breed. So there's a lot of livestock breeds are Hereford. Like Hereford is an actual place in the UK. So a lot of breeds are named after where they were developed. And with regards to pet stories, it's kind of funny. Like I said, talking about like cat crimes and bread, I had to stop. I have two cats, Annie and Rogue. I got Annie right before the pandemic hit. And so when we were starting to go back to the office and everything, I worried that she was maybe getting a bit lonely. So I thought I'd get her a buddy from the shelter. They're getting along mostly now, 6 months later. So it wasn't as quite fast friends. But Annie is not very interested in human food, but Rogue has also decided that she likes to steal my fancy gluten-free bread, or at least try to. But when I was a kid, my sister's cat, Harry Potter, used to try and, in my defense, this was like, we got him in like 2000. Rated the craze, right? Well, I would not name a cat that now, but, for understandable reasons, because, she's revealed herself to be a massive bigot. But at the time, he mostly responded to cat because he was always stealing food. But I remember one time he ripped open a bag of bread and like ate the middle out of every slice of bread. And he would get it. So, it's very interesting that cats are obligate carnivores. You wouldn't think they would want like carbs, and they can't taste sweet stuff. So I don't know what they're going for in the bread. But I found it very interesting that when they're not really interested in human food, Annie isn't. The little gluten-free cereal that I have somehow is irresistible to the cats. So I frequently have to defend my breakfast against my cats. I'm not sure why they don't get it. They're not allowed human food, but it is interesting that animals, little obligate carnivores, seem to find carbs irresistible. And then also just, it's very interesting that I thought they'd get along better than they have, but they're getting closer, but it's very much a pinky in the brain dynamic between the two of them. Rogue's bigger than Annie now by about half a kilo. And it's very clear which one of them is the smart one. And so I've got the small crafty one and the big, not quite so smart one whose brain is mostly love and crimes.
If you're a midlife woman, embracing your age, and wanting to make these years your best years, tune in to the Asking for a Friend podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Folan. Join me where I get your questions answered by top experts in their fields, and I speak to women just like you in all matters of health, wellness, career, and family. Subscribe to Asking for a Friend wherever you get your podcasts and refer to the show notes for where to follow us on social media.
I love the dynamic, the Pinky and the Brain dynamic. That's great.
Yes, one of my coworkers said that actually. So like, I can't take credit for being quite that clever, but yeah, I do post pictures of them being silly. And I have a screen door with a metal grate in front of it. So I'll put that up if the weather's nice and let them sort of have cat TV, but the birds in the yard have figured out the cats can't get to them. So they will just stand in front of the screen door and yell at the cats through the screen door. Australia has a lot of birds where I live. Like there's like 5 or 6 different species of parrots I see daily. We've got all these different types of perching birds, all very noisy, very, very distinct. And it's great. And so, you know, when I'm at work, the cats have all these big windows to hang out and just yell at birds through the glass all day. It's just really cool to see parrots. We get tawny frogmouths in the parking lot sometimes, or kangaroos, or there was an echidna outside my office the other day. It's just cool seeing all this wildlife just on a daily basis.
Tracy, was your question answered?
Yes, it was.
There you go. Doc, I got a sound effect for you. I just got to find it. One sec here. Oh no, I got it all ready to go and I lost it. Oh, here we go.
Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
There you go.
Yep. I'm very glad they figured out that doorknobs do a thing, but I have the round kind, so that even if they slap the doorknobs, it doesn't do anything. Thank goodness. It's very fun. Like I said, watching their little brains work, and I try to provide enrichment and puzzles and everything like that. And Annie picks up words very fast, and Rogue took like 3 months to understand the word up. But no, they're sweet and cuddly, and like I said, I love having. I couldn't have pets in grad school. I never had an apartment that allowed it, so having, and especially like I said, having a pet at home when I was working from home during the pandemic, having Annie at home was very nice.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Well, Tracy,
they're both very talkative.
Ginger, our new cat, is super meowy. Tracy, thanks.
How much of that is living with dogs? Just like, I wonder if how much of that is like living with dogs and hearing their vocalizations.
I don't know. I treat her like a dog, and people are telling me I'm weird, but yeah, she's super
Sounds
talky
like she's
to me.
settling in.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart. We love her so much. What I was going to say is, Tracy, thank you for the pet question. I forgot to ask it. Actually, it was on the list of things I was supposed to ask.
Thank you.
Over to Paula and then Karen. So Paula, go ahead. I'll have to relay your question to Doc.
That's okay. I think I'm sort of like the fourth man in the row here. Both my questions were asked, kind of. But,
okay.
That's okay. No, but that's okay because tell her I know she can't hear me, but we live in a town and we have lots of dairy farms, and we nicknamed it Smellington instead of Ellington because it always smelled like cows. But anyway, I just wanted to ask her like the same question almost as Kathy about, like, you hear all this like Wagyu beef and all these, steaks that are really highly priced and everything, if, how their diets were different than, say, a Holstein milking cow. So I don't know if that's sort of on the same thing from Kathy, but if not, then my second question, because Tracy asked it too, and I would just say, goats, do they have the same digestive system too, with the one stomach and the 4 parts of the stomach? Because how can they eat stuff? Because I can remember stories from my grandfather, like they would eat like convertible tops on a car or something. And, you wonder how different they are from, a cow, because how come cows don't eat stuff like goats do?
Like the side of a barn. Okay, so Doc, the question from Paula, she was lamenting that 2 of her questions were already taken. They live near a lot of dairy farms, and they renamed Ellington Smellington because of the dairy farms. But her question's about goats. Do they have the similar digestive system to cows? Because goats can eat bananas type things, like weird stuff, like car parts and antifreeze and the side of barns. Anyways.
I mean, they can eat them. They might not be able to digest all of them per se. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they'd be able to really digest the car parts. They certainly have like a strong ability to chew on things, but they're licking and chewing on things versus digesting is a bit different. But yes, they have the same kind of very complex gut microbes. Goats, again, are a bit more like deer in the sense they're kind of more browsers, so they can eat like more shrubby things that might be too high in tannins for other animals to like. Because tannins can taste a little bitter to some animals, or they might not be able to handle as much in their gut. But goats can handle higher levels. Like I said, they can eat kudzu and poison ivy. So they're adapted a little bit more towards like browsing shrubby things. But yeah, they definitely have that same kind of complex gut system. And so they're sheep and goats are not just little cows. They have their own distinct requirements. There's some things that are fine for cows and not for sheep or goats, or vice versa. They all have their own different overlaps, just like donkeys and horses are different, right? Mm-hmm. But their stomachs, still that same kind of complex stomach. And yeah, with regards to the dairy smell, that is fair. There's a lot of work in trying to reduce that, certainly. But yeah, unfortunately, there is sometimes a bit of a smell, depending on how they're handling the manure. And you get that with pigs and chickens too. It's just unfortunate.
Well, we were at Comic-Con and it has kind of a smell in places too. So,
Yeah. I will say I've worked with pigs in the past. I don't now, and I've been to pig barns where I felt like the smell could knock you over.
Yeah, it's pretty pungent.
I feel like cow ruminants smell much nicer than pigs, personally. And certainly I've also been like in a pig barn that smells like it smells like a locker room or whatever. So it's just but cows and sheep, like they smell, like I said, manure obviously, like, yeah, it can be nasty, but like the animals themselves, actually, they don't smell. Like they're very clean animals. Not that pigs aren't, you know what I mean, but I feel like the overall smelliness is less. But
yeah, and then she also name dropped a cow and cuts of meat. Unfortunately, I'm a vegetarian, so when she said the name of the cow,
it's Wagyu.
Like, Wagyu, yes.
Yeah, Wagyu.
Yeah.
Versus like a Holstein dairy cow. Like, what makes the meat different, and is it partly hype, or is it what is it that differentiates the higher cuts of meat?
We have all these vegetarians asking questions to the livestock scientists.
No, that's fair. And I'm celiac, so I joke I'm sort of an obligate carnivore in some ways. So, but also no, this isn't a case where there's not really, it's not hype. There are real differences because, animals have different genetic sizes, different genetic propensities to marble, where that's that really nice fat. Different variation in mature size and fatness, right? And so Holsteins, dairy calves, the males historically, we used to like raise them for a couple of months and then eat them as veal. They weren't babies when we eat them. They'd be like a couple of months old maybe, right? But people aren't eating veal as much, but turns out there's good eating on a Holstein steer if you raise it right. And so you can't, that's called dairy beef. Or some producers will actually import genetic material from beef breeds like Angus or Simmental Angus crosses and use that for their lower quality females, where you want her milk, but you might not want to keep her daughters back. So then they'll have these beef dairy crossbred calves that then they can send to be raised for feed. But dairy beef like that is good quality. A full grown Holstein steer or a Holstein steer might get a little big for some processing plants. So, you have to change the infrastructure or manage them a little differently. They do have differences in how they can be managed versus beef breeds, but they're definitely tasty. California produces a lot of dairy beef because a lot of dairy cows, right? And like a lot of people probably could not tell the difference. In fact, they've done taste tests and some people can't. So, that's like, it's not, there's nothing stopping you from eating Holstein beef. And in fact, it's pretty good quality too, or from other dairy breeds. And some of the other dairy breeds, like again, Jerseys, some of them are more dual purpose to begin with. So I've had really good steaks from a Jersey steer. It was pasture finished from a local dairy. It was amazing. So some of these more like dairy breeds already have good eating qualities to begin with. We're just seeing more awareness of it. And I think that's great because it's more sustainable. And it's also, again, additional income for producers if they can sell those calves to be raised for meat production later. That's helpful to them, or raise their own even, depending on what they're doing. With Wagyu, though, that is definitely it's not a hype thing so much as this is a specific breed that has been selected for this kind of meat quality, right? And they grow differently. They're much more of a slow and steady, but you get that really good quality. You can feed them differently. Like I mentioned, the calculators we have earlier, we actually have a separate calculator for Wagyu producers to help them feed their animals. And so it's the genetics of the breed, but also the fact that people are marketing that breed as a premium product. And so putting in the extra inputs, getting it to that premium quality, which, more time, more inputs to really help these animals meet their genetic potential for producing really rich, very highly marbled meat, which means, they're getting very high quality feed because fat takes energy. And so it's just very high quality premium products, like you might see like the really fancy wines or like the really fancy high quality cheeses. Again, that's a lot of time and care and effort that goes into it. So it's definitely not a hype thing. That is like a specific product differentiation thing that they're doing takes advantage of how this breed of cattle has been selected over years and years and years to produce this premium quality product. So it's good. It's definitely it's expensive, but it's expensive for a reason. But it's definitely good. And I've had some. It's definitely a treat thing, But yeah, it's worth checking out if you haven't tried it. And just, obviously, again, with the caveat, if it's cooked well, you want to make sure that you're cooking it right. But yeah, it's cool. And we're seeing more. Australia is producing more Wagyu as well. Like I said, we have here at DPI have the little Wagyu feed calculator that the engine that I'm working on goes into. But also, we have all these different tools for producers because, not all the cows are the same. You have to sort of tailor different things to different producer groups.
Paula, did that answer your question?
Okay, well, thank you, Teller. Thank you very much. That really answered it because I know that probably different ways that they have to feed them, and I've had Wagyu beef and it's very good, but lately I think I'm going more vegan and going toward cheese, so I'm trying. But anyway, Teller, thank you very much.
You betcha. Paula says thank you for the question.
Paula says thank you very much for answering her question, and that's great, and it really enlightened me too, and I really appreciate the talking about the selection because I teach that in my science classes about selection, and that's another example that I can draw from and share with my students. So I'm excited.
If you want, I have some other examples. I'd be happy. I can if you want, I can give you some other cool ones to show to your students. Just email me or whatever. I'm happy to share. It's really cool how we selected all these different livestock breeds.
Yeah, no, it's amazing actually. Because I kind of knew about when we talk about artificial insemination, and we want to have the biggest baby, but then we want to have a smaller mom because of the amount of resources that you put in, and then yeah, so this is excellent. Our next speaker is Karen.
Hi, this is Ross, the host of Smells Like Humans, a show about interesting and quirky human behavior. We bring humor, empathy, and warmth to topics such as relationships, dating, work, self-compassion, weddings, phobias, aging parents, travel mishaps, death, and many more. Ever wonder what happens at a cuddle party? We talk about it. Free-range kids in restaurants? We've got some thoughts. Bedtime stories for adults? We're on it. Light, fun, unscripted conversation and personal stories. Please join us by clicking the link in the show notes.
I accidentally muted myself and I've been talking for 2 minutes and I'm like, why is Chris talking over me?
Well, I thought you were, doing the wisdom thing.
No, I'm just stupid. I'm just so dumb. I was like, why is nobody listening to me? Okay, anyways, we'll go over to Karen and we might have to relay Karen's question.
Okay, I'll be really quick. I would like for humane reasons to be a vegetarian, but I can't. My constitution won't let me. I think, like you, Jason, I have that POTS, and I tend to be faint, and I tend to have low blood pressure, and so if I try to eat vegetarian, I just really feel horrible all the time. But for humane reasons, I just wanted to tell her that the funniest thing I've heard today, and it makes me kind of want to cry and laugh at the same time, is cattle going to freezer camp. I just thought freezer camp was the funniest expression. It's really a riot. Did you hear her say the cattle go to freezer camp?
I might have missed
I
that.
did.
Okay.
I did.
So
I did.
Karen is talking about how she liked your comment, the cows going to freezer camp. She thought that was funny.
Oh, that's Neolithic sheep, my shepherd's thing that he said on his Twitter. I just really like that, and I keep using it at work, and some of my coworkers have picked it up. You know, when someone uses a word that you think is really clever. So that's good. Check out Neolithic Sheep on Twitter. He is awesome. He's got amazing cows and sheep and very adorable collie, but also he talks a lot about cool sheep. But also, yes, that was just such a clever phrase that I just wound up using it. But it's a good phrase. It's catchy.
It is.
So I'm not that clever. That is all him.
Thank you. And tonight was great.
Karen says thank you, and tonight was great.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, we did pretty good relaying the questions with a little bit of tech difficulty there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we're out of speakers. We have a lot of people listening on Wisdom, but nobody's come up to ask a question. And a few people have popped in and out on Clubhouse. So I thought it was just going to be me talking to nobody in an empty room on Clubhouse. But yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 people that popped in and out.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's good. Last chance, any of our speakers up still? Do you have any kind of follow-up questions or anybody in the audience? And then we'll wrap things up right away here. Paula, your hand's up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got a funny one. What is cow tipping? Because it wasn't that something in the 50s or 60s, and you hear people say I don't know if they're half asleep and cows tip over. I don't know. Maybe someone would know that, but always hear about this cow tipping.
Paula wants to know about cow tipping. Is it real? Could you tip a cow over?
No, it is not a real thing. Cows like to sleep kind of in a little loaf form, like a cat. Or like I said, they'll fall asleep in really silly positions, sprawled out, or why is your head under the fence post? How is that comfortable? But no, sneaking up on a cow enough to sort of tip it and shove it over would be hard because they would scatter and might go for you. But also you couldn't tip them over when they were asleep, and then trying to do that while they were awake. It's an urban legend. I don't know where it came from, but no, it's not really a thing. And it would be a great way to put yourself in the emergency room if you were lucky. But no, it's also just mean to the cows. Now sometimes animals can if they can get stuck, maybe in a culvert or something like that, that can be dangerous because then gases can build up in their rumen and then they can get bloat, and that can be really dangerous for them. Because they might get twisted in such a way that it'd be hard for them to bring up the gas from their stomach. But then that's a case where you call a vet or something like that too. That's where something bad has happened and you need to rescue them. Or a trained personnel need to rescue them. But also that's a situation where someone who knows what to look for in terms of concerning signs would intervene. Usually if you see a animal asleep in a really silly position, just think about how many times you've seen a dog or a cat asleep in some weird position. How is that comfortable? Same difference.
Oh yeah, Bunsen would sleep on his back. He'd sleep on his back with his paws up. He was adorable, but he was sometimes I thought he might be dead. I was oh no, but he's just sleeping super weird because he was a weird little puppy sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, there was a thread on Twitter pretty recently. I forget who it was. I'm sorry, but it was another I think it was Danny Rabaiotti or something.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Danny.
Yes, the weird Steve kind of thing.
Yeah.
About some you look at animals and sometimes their data's just weird or they're doing things. It's you're going along past the pens. You're looking is that steer dead? Nope, he's just asleep in a really weird position. Okay, that's just Steve. That's what he does. He likes to sleep with his head under the fence post, or or he's got his he's got his butt up against the feed bunk for some reason. Okay, you do you, Steve. That's you. Yeah. And you especially like I said, doing an experiment, you learn which animals, that's them being weird. But you always get like, I tell students to like plan for like 1% animals that are just, you can't train them to do what they need to be, or they're not safely handleable because maybe they're, they don't play with others, or they're just mean. Sometimes animals just do not get along with people and they're not safe to handle. And you just got to plan for like 1% being, you can't run the experiment with them because they just can't train them to use the feeder or whatever, or they have other issues. And then like I've got 10% just weirdos that you just have to factor, like, oh, this one's an escape artist, or this one likes to mess with his water, or this one will steal your hat, which that's why also I have short hair, because getting a ponytail yanked on by livestock hurts.
They'll bite your hair. Yeah, they'll bite your hair.
Or horses will go after ponytails. But I wear baseball caps, like even in the barn or whatever, and it's better for them to steal your hat and chew on your hat than on your hair. So
yeah, a buddy of mine that I went to school with, they had a cow that was a biter. So if you got too close to the fence, the cow would just randomly sneak up on you and bite you. And it only takes getting bit by a cow hard a couple times to really watch out.
They don't have like upper incisors, but they're still able to get you good. Or, again, they might think it's fun to headbutt you or whatever, and it's not fun for you.
Because they weigh 1,000 pounds. Or more.
Or even like I said, even a goat or sheep, or there was one of the sheep in our experiment that we started calling him Admiral Akbar, because he looked like he wanted to be petted. Because the experimental sheep, like they were used to us, they did like to be patted a little bit. But no, what he wanted to do was just chew on your genes.
Oh, it was a trap.
Yes, it was. So I just, like I said, that's why I wear jeans from the thrift store if I'm going to be in the barn, because like they will like to chew on the side seam of your jeans. They find it, the sheep, when I'd be in there cleaning the pens, the sheep would just come up and just start chewing on my jeans. So, it was a trap. They didn't want attention. They just wanted to use you as a chew toy. But that's why, again, it's safe. And, earrings, dangly things, little kids too, when I was a kid, I accidentally ripped my mom's earring through her ear.
Yeah.
Like, little kids and livestock, dangly things are to be avoided.
True. Yes.
You never know what they might decide is a toy.
Looks like some kind of plant. All right. Thanks for your question, Paula. I think we'll wrap things up. Unless anybody else has a comment. Going once, twice. Doc, thanks so much for being our guest tonight on Science Chat. For folks that live in the city or don't have a lot of experience with quote unquote farm animals, I think this was probably really enlightening. I grew up in rural Alberta, like we're talking like the Farmville, Alberta. So, it's something that I grew up my entire childhood with, but I still learn so much from amazing scientists like you. Like every time I follow your feed, I'm always learning stuff. And just thank you so much for being a guest tonight.
You're welcome. I guess it's all stuff that I had to learn too. I didn't really know much. I just worked hard and listened, and that's the nice thing. There's so many people to learn from, and it's great. And I'm always learning stuff too. I'm learning, all sorts of different things. I've got some colleagues who work with chickens, so I'm learning some stuff about chickens just from chatting with them. It's just really cool. And that's what I love about my job. I never stop learning. I do all sorts of cool stuff. And we actually just had a paper go up open access. So I'll be tweeting a bit about it. The sheep at a buffet kind of study.
I put it up in the nest, actually, Doc, on Twitter. I have the link up in the nest where people can look at that new paper.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll be chatting a little bit more about it, probably a bit later today. Just kind of explaining that it's a cool paper. And that's the cool. Our university's been made arrangements with publishers to make it easier for us to have things published open access. So I've got some, the team I'm on, the PhD student in the lab I'm in, he's submitting this week. So hopefully we'll have all of his cool papers from the sheep experiment to show in the next couple of months, because he's done. His PhD was a really cool project looking at feed efficiency in sheep, and it was really fun. We pulled a great team together. We've got some really exciting stuff to show you. And I'm with a great team. I've got so many amazing coworkers.
Yay.
So it's really great. And so we've got some really fun stuff coming up in the next couple of months that we'll be able to show.
Well, tag Bunsen and Beaker and we'll do a follow-up tweet about it. So when that happens.
That will be great.
Perfect.
And then also and hopefully COVID permitting, I'll actually get to go to a conference in Spain to present on some of the research too.
Oh, nice.
So yes, it'll be, we'll see. There's, again, safety and everything permitting, but it's fun to finally be able to have things coming out and being able to show all the cool stuff we found out over the past couple of years.
Folks in the audience, if you're not following Doc Holland, make sure you click on that follow button. And we'll keep up to date on what's happening in the world of livestock as things occur. And if you tag us, of course, we'll retweet or put together some kind of science kind of PSA thing about it.
Thank you so much. So, and thanks for doing this. I love tuning into the podcast, and it's really cool. So I appreciate you doing this, and it's great to come, and thanks everyone for your questions. I wasn't sure what people were going to ask, and it was really cool to hear what people wanted to know about. So thank you.
Well, it was you heard what Chris and I had to say because we couldn't get their voices to you. Yeah. But anyways,
yes. But you passed along the questions. So like I said, and if people have other questions, just at me on Twitter. I'm happy to. I'm not livestock all the time. It started off as my personal Twitter account, so you'll still see me talking about cats and cooking and video games and X-Men and stuff. But I talk about cool stuff in science, and I'm always happy to answer questions. Just at me, and I'm here. Or also I volunteer with Skype a Scientist too. So, if you're a school teacher, have kids in school, talk to your schools about Skype a Scientist, because then you can bring scientists like me or any other subject you might think about into your classroom like this.
Skype a Scientist is very cool.
Yes. I do 1 or 2 a month with them, and I just love it. I always love seeing what questions people have to ask.
I love that. I love that because you are a role model for our young girl scientists to look up to.
Well, thank you. I admit when I was younger, there weren't that many women scientists, and there weren't any out gay ones either. I was in high school, I was in college actually before I knew scientist who was openly gay. So I try to be visible like that to show people, that you can do that and that it's important. But I had a lot of really good role models in my life growing up, and I had very supportive parents. Especially my dad's an engineer. My mom was a lawyer and now actually works in construction. And, all of us wound up going into some sort of science related field. And a lot of that was just because of their encouragement and their support. So I got lucky to have a very big supportive family that always encouraged me.
100%.
We love what we love what you do, and we love you, Doc. Thanks so much for being a guest tonight, and thanks for your science communication.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and thanks again for inviting me.
Anytime. So in our wrap up tonight, again, thanks to Doc Holland who talked to us about livestock science, how cows turn vinegar into cheese, and that cats and cows are more similar than we think. Thank you so much to our speakers who came up to ask great questions that we had to relay through my voice or Chris's voice. Thanks to the people listening on Wisdom, and to the 5 people who came in through Clubhouse. And thanks to everybody who's listening in the audience. You could be anywhere in the world, but in the world you chose to listen to our science show. So thank you so much. Remember, every Saturday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time is Pet Chat. We play games, somebody wins a prize, and we talk about Bunsen and Beaker, and our community shares their adorable pet stories. Our guest next week on Science Chat is Dr. Sarah Mikulvich. There we go. Dr. Sarah Mikulvich, who is a NASA rover scientist. So we go into outer space again next week. Thanks again, Doc. And for everybody, take care of yourself. Chris, thanks for being a great co-host.
Thanks for being you.
Okay. All right, take care, everybody.
Me too.
For science, empathy, and cuteness. Space ending in 3,